We have cast rats as villains for centuries, symbols of disease, filth, and decay. But what if, in seeing them only as pests, we've missed what they reveal about us, our cities, and maybe even the ways that we're reshaping our planet? Could it be more productive to view them as ecological messengers instead? To explore this idea, let's play heroes and villains for a moment, with two familiar characters. Both characters are rats, but depending on how you see them, one might be considered a medical hero, and the other an urban menace. One contributes more than 20 million individuals every year to scientific research, leading to new medicines and treatments for people. The other, it transmits or contributes more than 50 diseases to people. One shows remarkable pro-social behaviors like trying to free a trapped colleague or companion, or trying to bring them food. The other causes billions of dollars in crop damage and food contamination every single year. One is used to detect buried landmines in former war-torn regions of the world, saving countless lives. The other is notorious for damaging buildings and chewing wires, as many of us learned when we had our cars parked for so long during COVID lockdowns. One has become a laboratory model organism, while the other has invaded nearly every continent on Earth and been implicated in the extinctions of nearly 1/3 of all bird and mammal species that have disappeared in recent centuries. One, represented by Remy in the movie Ratatouille, even opened our hearts to the idea that anybody can cook and maybe build bridges with people. Compare that to Templeton from Charlotte's Web, a selfish glutton that refused to help Charlotte and Wilbur until there was something in it for himself. Now, I know people that have rats as pets, family pets, and they adore them. I have colleagues that study their pain, fear, and behavior in the lab. And believe me, I know plenty of folks who view them as nothing more than vermin in need of extermination. But regardless of how you see rats, or what our goals are towards them, one thing is clear: we need to understand them better. When I started studying wild rats more than a decade ago, I was shocked by just how little we knew about them. For all the fear, fascination, and frustration they invoke, our understanding of their real-world behavior and ecology is surprisingly thin. So my research started with a question: what can rats teach us about the urban systems we've built and how those are changing over time? In one study, we reviewed more than 300 papers to find out what pathogens and parasites wild rats carry and how that differs across cities. We found that rats harbor more than 50 diseases that can infect people. But what really stood out is that cities that had less sanitation infrastructure and higher social and income inequality had rats that carried more diseases. That means that the disease risk posed by rats, for which they have so much notoriety, is intertwined with human decisions about urban and economic development. Next, we had a study where we mapped where in cities rats are most likely to thrive. And across the 8 cities we investigated, we saw a very similar pattern. Rats clustered in dense neighborhoods with older buildings, less green space, and lower socioeconomic indicators. After mapping those current infestations, we next wanted to know how are they changing over time. Because the media loves to claim that rats are taking over our cities, but without a lot of data to support that. So, are rats actually taking over our cities? And if so, why? To answer this, we collected long-term data on rat sightings and inspections for as many cities as we could. We scoured public data portals. We contacted city officials. And we even filed Freedom of Information Act requests. In the end, we had usable data from 16 cities, 13 in the US and 3 abroad. When we analyzed the trends, 3/4 of those cities had clear increases in their rat populations. So yeah, it does appear rats are on the rise in most cities around the world. But again, why? 2 key factors stood out: urbanization and climate change. Cities that had more people, more concrete, and less green space had faster growth in their rat populations. And that makes sense. More people generate more waste for rats to feast on. And cities with more built environment have more shelter for rats to take refuge in. But the strongest relationship was with temperature. Cities that had warmed the most in recent decades saw the sharpest increases in their rat populations. And this makes sense biologically. This species of rat is fundamentally a burrowing animal. They prefer to stay underground where it's safe and secure, leaving only to feed and bring food back to their nest. In cold winters, they stay underground for longer, where it's insulated and warm, because venturing out too often in freezing temperatures can be deadly for them. But as winters warm, that means more time above ground, more time feeding, and more opportunities to reproduce. And in turn, higher winter survival, plus an extra litter or two of baby rats, can quickly fuel a population boom. So these increases in rat populations are not just a nuisance. They're a signal of profound environmental changes. All right, what can we learn from all of this? Well, if rats are thriving because of the ways we build, manage, and even heat our cities, then maybe the best questions here aren't how do we get rid of them all, but rather what are their numbers telling us about the weak spots in our own systems that are under stress? Because rats flourish where human systems are already faltering, where infrastructure is aging, where garbage is poorly managed, and where inequality is high. Tracking rats systematically and proactively gives us early warning about where those stresses are accumulating. Ultimately, basic solutions like reducing food waste and sealing those garbage bins is critical for dealing with rats. But the deeper lesson here is about design. It's about creating cities where rats don't find so many opportunities to exploit. Because in the end, this is not about the rats, not just about the rats. It's about how we live together in cities. With each other, yes, but also with the species that adapt to the worlds that we create. If we can understand how rats thrive in our cities, then maybe we can build and create cities that work better for all of us. Cleaner, fairer, and more resilient to the changes that are sure to continue. Thank you.